Dear reader, I'm Tony and this is Book Text. Today I just want to chat with you a little bit about the reading that I'm doing for the Odd Read Along. This is George Gissing's The Odd Women, a Victorian novel about spinsters learning to be independent women. But first, I thought I would share a word of the day that is related to the Odd Women. Today's word is tabby. And it does not refer to the cat like you might think. Instead, it was a slang word short for Tabitha that referred to a bitter spinster. Are there any tabbies in The Odd Women? I don't think I'm quite far enough in to tell. Maybe Miss Nunn. I should warn you, there will probably be spoilers. If you have not read this novel and you're interested in reading it, please, you can skip to a different video. So I just had a couple of thoughts so far about The Odd Women. Some lines that I pulled out. I'm finding myself really enjoying the character's penchant for debating the new woman question. And, the woman question, talking about new women, various phrases that they used in Victorian England to talk about this subject. So I pulled out some phrases that I thought were either really amusing or I really agreed with. So an old maid factory is what they have been calling, I think Monica calls Miss Barfoot's school an old maid factory. I really like that idea of just like turning out old maids. War does that, I feel. There's so many characters with so many points of view, and I don't agree with all of them, but I did really like this line, and I think Miss Nunn says it. When all women, high and low alike, are trained to self-respect, then men will regard them in a different light, and marriage may be honorable to both. So she's kind of setting forth, because Miss Nunn is quite against marriage so far. And she's setting forth in here what she thinks might make marriage possible or make it more, what she says, honorable, more, she might make it better for both men and women instead of an institution of slavery for women, as she seems to believe. But I love that the solution to that is self-respect for women. And that when women can see themselves as more than just wives, that they will be better contributors as wives. I think that's so interesting. I also enjoyed this line, which I feel like, I should have written down who said it, maybe Miss Barfoot. It's better to be a woman in our day. With us is all the joy of advance, the glory of conquering. Thank heaven we are women. And I feel that way too. Like, ours is the joy of advance. We can progress. And that's a good feeling to know that there are ways to improve. And certainly there are barriers to advancing and conquering. And some women feel those barriers a lot more than others. Modern day feminism is quite intersectional and should be, because there is a lot more at play than just being a woman. Your situation in life is going to affect how you experience being a woman. And I've appreciated taking a few women's studies courses as a graduate. I've been able to take a couple classes, and they really have opened my eyes to other perspectives of womanhood. And I think that Odd Women isn't quite there yet, but it was in a different time, and I appreciate that. You can tell I'm keeping up with the reading, so I'm only so many chapters in, but I just have really enjoyed seeing the different ideas about the state of women in that kind of late Victorian time period. I have one other thought about the names in this book, because I think names tell us a lot. And I think Victorian novelists especially used names to do some of the storytelling. So there are 3 names that I have noticed that kind of tell us what is happening to unmarried women in this time period. Madden, so you have the Madden sisters, you have Miss Nunn, and then you have a Mr. Widowson. And those names tell me that women basically had three choices when they were unmarried in that day. They could be mad, as in insane. They were crazy, creepy old spinsters. They could be nuns, or they could be widows. And that basically these relationships are kind of exemplifying those situations. We've got people who are really adamant, like Miss Nunn, about not getting married. And then you have Mr. Widowson and his sister, who is actually, or sister-in-law, she's actually a widow. So she is enjoying that role because she feels she has more freedom now. And so I'm interested in seeing where her story takes her. And Mr. Widowson does marry a younger woman who will eventually become his widow, I have no doubt. So that's kind of interesting to me. She will end up more like her sisters than she thinks. The Madden sisters are a little bit mad. They're kind of weird, and people think that they are not taking care of themselves. Something is definitely very wrong with Virginia. I haven't quite figured it out yet, but she takes to drink quite a bit, and she won't eat meat, and she's clearly not very healthy in that regard. And Alice is also not very healthy. So you've got these sisters who are going mad, being spinsters, and then you have women who refuse to marry, like a nun, and then you have women who marry and then end up still becoming unmarried women in a way. So I'm finding this really interesting. I'm finding a lot to think about, a lot to connect to the other things that I've read, other things that I understand about the woman question, about feminism, modern feminism, intersectional feminism. I'm just really enjoying this book. It's quite easy to read. I don't know if you're reading it, but you've noticed that I've had a hard time just stopping at the 2 chapters a day, but I've been good. I haven't snuck ahead like I threatened to on Instagram a few days ago, because I'm enjoying it. I'm trying to soak it in. Reading it a little bit slower is giving me more time to take some notes. So have you been reading The Odd Women? What are your thoughts? Do you have any other thoughts on maybe other names in the story that have particular meaning to you that you might think are interesting? I'm not quite sure what to think of Everard Barfoot. Is there something going on with that name? Maybe. It's kind of interesting to think about. It's got a compound word, Barfoot. You've got the word ever in Everard that might suggest something. Not quite sure. But I'm looking forward to discovering more as I continue reading this book. Please tell me what you're thinking about The Odd Women. And remember, there's always another book.